Hello and welcome to Bent TV. My name is Megan. I use she, her or they, them pronouns. And today we're going to be talking about the B in LGBTIQA+. So I'd like to also introduce my guest.
Hi, I'm Josh Muller. I go by they, them pronouns. I'm the president of the Melbourne Bisexual Network.
So we're going to kick off talking about IDAHOBIT and what it is and what it means for us as a group, as a bisexual group. And to start, before we go into that, I'm going to talk about what it means to be bisexual to us.
How do we define bisexual these days?
And I think often it's a lot broader than people realize. My favorite definition is by a brilliant activist named Robin Ox, who we were lucky enough to meet earlier in the year, who was just as great in person. And she says, "I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge that I have in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one sex and or gender, not necessarily at the same time, not necessarily in the same way, and not necessarily to the same degree." So it's a big thing, and I think that's what often we want to put across, is that it's not men and women, it's not one or the other, it's a very broad, nuanced thing to be bisexual, and that's how I feel about my own.
And it doesn't mean 50-50.
No.
In fact, like, forget that ratio nonsense. It also doesn't require you to be actively having sex or having partners of multiple genders all at the same time. Although if you are, like, great power to you.
And as well, it doesn't require you to bring a list of everything that you've ever done. Like, you can never have had sex with anyone and identify as bisexual, and that is every bit as valid as someone who has had sex with multiple partners of multiple genders. And I think, again, we can be very dismissive about that, people labeling themselves as something. And we don't ask heterosexual people to come with proof that they're heterosexual.
Speaking of labels and things, so lots of people use different words to describe their sexuality, and when we say bisexual, like we use that kind of definition.
Yeah.
Sometimes we use the word bi plus to kind of cover an umbrella of anyone who is multigender attracted. And that includes pansexual people, polysexual people, people who are using different labels like queer, or maybe they identify as straight or gay. Yeah. And they're attracted to more than one gender.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing. We can have, there's an interesting term of, we can have bisexual behaviour, but maybe not identify as bisexual. And there's a lot of interesting, you can have a lot of interesting conversations in that space, I think, about what we publicly identify as, and also how we behave and the differences between those things. I think that's part of what I really care about saying that I'm multi-gender attracted, because I still feel that there is still a lot of stigma around that. And whenever I hear people come out and say, "Hey, I'm bi," I'm always like, oh, it feels refreshing, and also like it lessens your shame every time someone else feels like they're proud to say who they are. You know, things like wearing badges, which I don't do all the time, but I feel a little bit different when I'm doing it. And also I feel like I get to show up with lots of facets of myself, not just the one which is decided by maybe who I'm standing next to or how I look on that day.
Yeah. It's a whole person.
Who knew we're multifaceted creatures?
So tell me about IDAHOBIT.
Well, I've just been learning about it actually recently, because I've been in Australia for a while, but it's not something I was really very connected with as a concept. So I sort of heard about it, I didn't really know. I kind of wondered if it was a name. IDAHOBIT, it could be an interesting character. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of what comes to mind. And it stands for the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia. Yeah, and I think a lot of it's been around education and also pride. Yeah. And we were sort of thinking about what that means for us as a group, weren't we? So as a bi plus group.
So it's 17th of May?
Yeah, 17th of May, so 2020. So
coming up in a little while.
Yeah.
And I guess like part of why we're here today is also to talk about the B, making sure it gets included, I guess.
Why? I think a lot of people are a bit like, why do you want to talk about being bisexual? Like, why have you told me you're bisexual? I know I've experienced that from a few people when I first more publicly came out. They're kind of like, so? Yeah. Like, why are you telling me? What do I need to know it for? And I think that can be a really tricky question to receive and also to answer, because sometimes it's hard to explain why it's so important that you get to publicly claim parts of yourself. And I think as well, like, the more I've learned about the bi community, the more I've learned why it is so important that we are included, because for so many reasons we can feel excluded in a lot of different spaces.
Right.
So, yeah, and with our heterosexual friends and also with our gay friends.
Right. Yeah, we experience this kind of dual discrimination or don't belong anywhere not queer enough for queer spaces, not straight enough for straight spaces, and get kind of lost in between often, or feel not able to speak about your past partners, or not able to, vocally say I'm bisexual or pansexual.
And often as well, I think we get told we have a certain degree of privilege because we don't necessarily experience homophobia on a daily basis. Maybe if we're in a relationship that looks straight. I say that because relationships don't have sexualities. People do. That's a tricky concept as well. I think a lot of us internalize that and feel like we should find things easier than we do. And actually, the more we start to talk to other people who are bi+, the more we realize that a lot of us have a very particular kind of shame that sits with us because we don't feel privileged. And we don't feel comfortable and we don't feel good about that part of ourselves. Often really in any spaces. And I think finding bi+ community is really powerful for realizing that you're not alone in feeling those things. And that definitely hasn't felt like a privilege to me.
Yeah, and I suppose that's part of what we do with our group is build community, but also spread information amongst health professionals and with government and institutions to say, hey, actually bi+ people are struggling, and all of the research that we have says a lot of bi+ people are struggling, and in many areas struggling quite a bit more than gay and lesbian people. Yeah,
which I think is quite a surprise. I know when I've spoken to some of my gay friends, they're really surprised to understand that. And also really want to care for us. And we ran an amazing workshop recently which was all about dealing with our internalized biphobia, and had a lot of allies show up and a lot of gay allies show up, which felt amazing to have them there saying that they want to support us and want to care for us, and the more that they learn that they need to, and that they do love us, which again we haven't maybe always felt at times for some of us. But it's a really beautiful thing to know that people, I think generally people want to support one another and they want to help. They just often don't always know where to start. So
and thinking of where have the bi people been?
Yeah, where have they been?
All of it. The answer is we've been at the head of movements. Right. Mother of Pride, bi. In organizations and institutions, in organizing groups, at marches and rallies, bi people have been throughout.
We've always been here and we'll always be here.
The feminist, lesbian, separatist movement filled with bis. But often told that they had to restrict their sexuality. To choose.
To pick a side.
Right? It's the worst thing that you can ever ask a bisexual to do is to pick a side.
Or make a decision. And just we like to reclaim some of the things that have been used against us, as do lots of different queer groups. And there's something fun about making our own little niche jokes about what we're like and popping our collars and...
cuffing your jeans or cuffing your pants is it's sort of a ridiculous thing. Right? But it's also us creating uniform culture, subculture that is often shared on the internet and through sort of bi+ Facebook groups or in memes.
It's connecting, isn't it? It's connecting and finding shared joys as well. And I think that's been one of my favorite things about finding bi+ community is I found so much joy and celebration and moving towards pride, which I saw a brilliant speaker the other day talking about how you have to practice pride. And that really stuck with me. And I think it's a lot easier to practice pride when you have people around you also practicing pride. There's this collective energy and support and love and care and understanding which really enables pride to be a possibility as opposed to something which is for everybody else.
We had the Pride March not that long ago at Midsummer. Year on year, there's been more and more bi+ people marching. 5 or 6 years ago, the bi+ contingent was pretty small, and there was one year in particular that there were actually like boos from the crowd or people saying that bi+ people weren't welcome there, or at least bi+ people felt unwelcome there. From then to now, we had over 80 people marching as part of the bi+ group. Lots of support from the crowd. There's just been this rising tide of bisexual energy,
and that
especially in Melbourne. But
it's been a beautiful thing to kind of be a part of and grow, like see it grow all around you. That recognition of people in the crowd, like when they see you and see you being proud of something, which it's almost, you can sometimes spot people and it's like, they're like, oh,
right.
Like, this is a person who is that thing that I am and that maybe I don't feel ready to share, or maybe I'm not telling people about, but there's this like feeling of, just that how important that visibility can be for other people, and how many people will come out to people who are openly bi, like, I'm bisexual too. And there's the kind of the knock-on effect, I think, of and just normalizing saying it and not feeling, it's not necessarily even pride, it's just not feeling that you can't say it or that you're so ashamed that you couldn't tell people.
That's the thing, it takes, like when society shames and stigmatizes something, it takes courage to push through that. And like pride, I sometimes think of it as like a force field that we build against the stigma and shame and negativity from society, that like it takes work and effort, and like with, you know, say with BI+ community of Melbourne and MBN and stuff, it's taken work. People like Ruby Mountford and Anthony Lekis and, you know, other community members, Bi Alliance Victoria, the Dominguezes, and it's been a slow build. And people don't necessarily see that work. And
that's that idea of always standing on the shoulders of the people before you, and that they were able to start and we were able to move it forward because of a lot of people who were brave enough to start saying it a long time ago. And there's some incredible activists in the UK as well that I was lucky enough to meet at BICon last year, and it's really inspiring how many people work really hard and nobody ever notices often outside these tiny communities, and what an impact those people have on just even changing the way we look at really binary structures in our culture, and just allowing space for alternatives. I was talking to with Ruby the other day about this, when you're planting seeds that you'll never see grow, but you're doing little things that hopefully shift for people in the future as well. And that's, I have a lot of admiration for people who do things without praise and without, it's not for the applause, it's because they really care about it. And I think there's a lot of that exists in like the bi+ kind of advocacy and activism space. And it's real good to try and praise people while they're doing the work. I want to say how much I appreciate you for running and doing a whole lot of the organising for the Big Bi Bonanza last year. And thank you. Hoping to do it again this year, right? Yeah, we are hoping so. And it was such a special day. Like, we had a huge turnout of, I think we had almost 800 people came out to that day, which is a huge turnout. Right. And it was a really beautiful feeling of coming together, and a lot of people said they felt very seen there in a way they hadn't in other spaces, because I guess the feeling is you assume everyone there is bisexual. It's a great way to live your life. I would highly recommend it. Assume you don't know, and so keep your expectations about people broad and open. It gives a lot more room for everyone. I call this lens by default. Yes, exactly. It's a beautiful bi until proven guilty. Exactly. I like that. It's a roomy way to live. Should we finish up on a few of the reasons why we love being bisexual? Because I feel like, again, there's not always enough talking about how it can be a really beautiful and expansive, wonderful thing to be bi. For me, it's maybe about an openness to experience. And a purposeful or somewhat internally felt erasing of boundaries and categories and lines and things, to be open to attraction and relationships and things from a broader array of people than just what society tells me I should, based off the gender that was assigned at my birth, based off my genitals. And so it's that kind of openness to experience, but it also feels really queer and radical and powerful to enact my life in a bisexual way. No, I really resonate with that, about being an openness to people and experience in life, and not putting people in boxes of these people I would maybe have sex with and these people I would never have sex with. Right. And often it's really not about sex at all. Surprise! Who knew that bisexuals aren't having sex constantly? But for me, it's just an openness to humans and connection and just life. Like you say, I think the minute you step outside of the binary, you realize how beautiful and multicolored and glorious it is. and I don't really want to go back in a box.
Once you start knocking down some boundaries, like knock them all down, right?
Yeah.
Like
throw out the binaries, live in the beautiful, multicolored, the grey area, which is pretty fantastic.
Look at non-monogamy, look at non-binary or transgenders.
Yeah.
Open up to that kind of different ways of being and possibility.
And curiosity as well, like just stay curious and stay open. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Megan.
I've been Josh Muller.
Thank you and goodbye.